My name is Michael Brenner. I'm the director of the Center for Israel Studies, and on behalf of the center and also of our co-sponsors, the Friends of Ben Gurion University, the university where our writer Etgar Keret teaches, I'm very happy to welcome you to the return of Etgar Keret to American University. A few years ago, some of you may remember, we had invited Etgar Keret for a lecture here, and we sent out the invitations, and hundreds of people had signed up. The reception was prepared, and then a few days before the event, we got this phone call that he had an accident in a taxi while driving to a reading in the United States. And that sounded almost like out of one of your stories. Maybe the taxi driver who wanted to be God, right?
It was a name, you're selling me short.
But unfortunately, it was real, and fortunately, Etgar did fully recover, and he came, and I think in 2017, and read, and now he's back again, and this time maybe it is Israel that has to recover from the tragic days almost a year ago, and ever since then, October 7th, of course, where everything has changed in Israel and in Gaza, and also to a very different level, though, we feel the repercussions on our campuses in the United States as well. And it also has changed, as Etgar Keret wrote, the way one can or maybe cannot write so easily after these events. He wrote in last December, since October 7th, I haven't really been able to write. For me, writing is a state in which you briefly release the suffocating grip of rationality and let your guts speak. But ever since this war broke out, my guts aren't saying anything. It's not that I don't feel, I feel too much all the time, but the things I'm feeling, whether sorrow or fury or loneliness, don't lead anywhere. So here we are, almost, yes, maybe that's a good sign for everyone to check if your phones turn off. So we are here, and I just want to read one other quote, which I found very impressive, where, like many of us, but so much more eloquently, said that we should not fall in the trap of seeing things in black and white and in a polarized way. And I'm quoting here again from Etgar Keret. We live in an age right now in which it's basically a package deal. If I know your identity, I already know whether I will support you or not. But that's not the case for me. I am an Israeli. I'm not pro-Israeli. How can I be pro not getting enough food to people in Gaza? How can I be pro bombing that cause such huge collateral damage? I cannot be for that. But does this mean that I'm pro-Palestinian? How can I be pro massacring families? How can I be pro an ideology that says I don't care about sacrificing all my citizens because Allah would make them great men? I can't. So I am pro-humanity, and I'm in favor of what I think should be promoted in this world, the way my parents taught me. And I try to avoid any kind of labeling that would basically outsource my moral responsibility. But no worries. Before I cite more Keret quotes, I think we really want to hear him speak. And I don't have to introduce him really in many words to this audience. Born in Israel just a few months after the Six-Day War to Holocaust survivors, he is today not only one of the most celebrated Israeli writers of short stories, but also a scriptwriter, author of graphic novels and of TV series, whose work has been translated into more than 40 different languages. I wonder who can actually name more than 40 different languages in this room. So please join me in welcoming Etgar Keret, and also the moderator of our session today, our very own Professor Lawrence Strauss from the Jewish Studies program. Thank you.
So thank you for having me here. It's really, I must say that I haven't toured in the US for a few years, and I can hold it in my hand also if no, or no. Yeah, okay. So I want to say that I haven't toured since COVID probably, and but before that I would come to the US at least 3 times a year to speak, and I must say that that coming this time it really feels different. Coming this time it's really like my watch is still on the Israeli time, and after every reading I check if the airport will be open, if I'll be able to go home, as if like there's something so volatile about the reality is that you feel all the time that you're in a kind of a limbo. I'm here, but I don't feel as if I'm completely here. And I wanted to speak today really about creativity, about imagination, about the power of storytelling, and how I feel that it affects my life. And in the Jewish tradition, we say "Ve'igata lebincha." Michael will probably know how to say it in English. And you shall tell your children, like in the Agada. And so I can say that, that the understanding that creativity, storytelling, and imagination are survival tools are something that I've learned from my parents, who were both Holocaust survivors. My mother was the only survivor of her family. She was in the Warsaw Ghetto, she really saw great importance in the power of telling stories. And I remember that when I was a child, my mom, who told us as children that she's an untrained mother, in that sense that she said, you learn to be a mother by being a child and following your parents, and then you write down all the things that you liked in your childhood, and you write down all the things that you didn't like, and you make sure that you repeat the things that you like and avoid the things that you didn't like. But she said, my parents died when I was very young, so I didn't have that proper training, and that's why I need to improvise. So I will set up all kinds of rules, but you can dispute them because they were never tested, so you can always say, Mom, this doesn't work. And I must say that in all my life, all my childhood, I never once thought that any of the rules that my mom had didn't make sense. I loved them all. And it was only when I grew up and I realized that the rest of the world don't keep to that rules that I knew that I was in trouble. But for example, one of my favorite rules when I was a child was the fact that my mom said that if it rains, you don't go to school. Because she said, with all due respect to the not so important things that they teach you there, it's not worth getting wet for, If it's a nice day, go play with other children, listen to your not very sharp teacher, it's okay, but if it rains, come on. So she had many rules and traditions that only when I grew up I realized that they were not the household of all the houses. And one thing that was of great importance in our house, in our home, was bedtime stories, because my mother's strongest memory of her parents was from the years of the war, where they couldn't provide her with food, they couldn't provide her with warm clothes, but every day when they would run around trying to survive, the thing that they had in the back of their mind was making up a story that they'll tell my mom at night. And every night they would serve a new story to her, one that they thought over the entire day. And my mother said that she felt very important when they would tell her this story, because she knew that this story was made specially for her. And she made sure that she'll never fall asleep in the middle, because a story that nobody heard it is stillborn. It will not come to life. So she said, it doesn't matter how tired I was, I never fell asleep when they told me a story. And she wanted to keep that tradition. And our house, which was was full of books because my parents, they spoke 6 and 7 languages and read in 6 and 7 languages. Each, like, my mom is 7, my father is 6. They had, our bookshelves were full of books, you know, as a kid, in languages that I couldn't understand or didn't even know what those languages were. But somehow, like, children books were not allowed in our home. Because for my mother, reading us a classic, maybe, I don't know, A.A. Milne or Alice in Wonderland, was an action that only a lazy parents would take. The same way that, you know, that a diligent parent would prepare their children a dinner every time and scramble the eggs and cut the salad, while a lazy one would order a pizza. So for her, reading us from books was the equivalent of ordering a pizza. She knew that her parents loved her a lot, and they never read to her from a book. They didn't have any access to a book, but she saw something in their eyes that she wanted to see, us to see in her eyes. And I think that what I learned very quickly as a child, that telling a story is a way to give love when you have nothing else to give. When you can't give food, when you can always give a story. And her parents, when they took their energy and love and effort every day when they were busy surviving, thinking of an end, thinking of a character, thinking of something that would make my mother smile, she wanted to give that to us too. And what happened was that with my mother, that for me, I thought that all houses were like, households were like that. And I remember that the first time a child came for me for a sleepover, and I said to him, and you know, and soon there'll be the real cool part, right, Mom? You're going to come and tell us a story when we're in bed. And my mom went really, really close to the kid, kind of examined him, and she said, tomorrow, you ask your mother tomorrow, she'll tell you a story. And left the room because you don't tell a story to any snot-faced kid, you know, that come. You know, story means something. It's not just something that you kind of throw around. You give it to somebody that you love enough to invent a story for. And I must say that when I grew up, I married the daughter of Israel's greatest children book writer, like our Saul Silverstein, Jonathan Geffen, and it was very, very funny because my wife came from a tradition of tons of children books and of knowing all the classics, of being read from a book, and I came from a tradition that only people who hate their children read them from books. And we decided that we let our child decide every night if he wants a story from a book or a story from the head. And I must proudly say that until he learned to read, he always preferred stories from the head. And I told him hundreds of stories. And the funny thing is that one night I told him a story about a cat boy cub, something about it flies in a zeppelin or something. And before he fell asleep, he put his tiny hand on me and he said, Father, could you do me a favor? And I said, sure, yeah, what do you want? He said, after I fall asleep, could you write this story down? And I already told him 100 stories. And I said, yeah, but why do you want me to write this story down? And he opened his eyes and he said, Dad, because that's how we make a living. And being a very good father, I wrote that story down, and it became an international bestseller. You know, so I guess, you know, the kid knew something about the book business even at an early age. But this meeting of stories was not the only time where I saw the power of stories and storytelling, because I felt all the time with my mother that my mother had this sentence that I thought about a lot during since the 7th of October. My mother said, when times are good, like if the word is a tree, try to be on top. To be, because you see the entire forest. Try to be a fruit at the top of the tree, because you see everything. She said, when times are bad, be in the mud, break root. Because she said, when the story, when everything is nice, subscribe to any story you want. But when things are bad, don't look for a story to hang to, because this story will probably not be the good one, not be the story that you need. And I think that the first demonstration of my life, in my life, that I had of the power of storytelling was when my mother took me to a child pediatrician when I was really like 8 years old. And this doctor, I remember her name, Dr. Bokokovsky, it's a name that's difficult to forget. She had in her waiting room only 2 chairs. And when we came, there was a mother and a child. The mother was about my mom's age. The child was maybe 2 years older than me. I grew up in Ramat Gan, which is like New Jersey to Tel Aviv. So Ramat Gan to Tel Aviv, it's very close. But the majority of people there are from Iraqi descent. So there weren't that many Holocaust survivors. So it was, my parents being among the few Holocaust survivors, people knew, even people that didn't know them knew they were Holocaust survivors. And when we got to the room, the mother elbowed her son and said, "Get up, give her a seat, she's a Holocaust survivor." And my mom was 44, 45 at the time, or I don't know. And the kid got up and he was very polite and nice and he said, "Please, ma'am, have my seat." And my mother said to him, "Oh, you're such a polite and nice child. May I ask you, why are you giving me your seat?" And he said, "Because you're a Holocaust survivor." And he said, "Yeah, but what do you think it means that I'm a Holocaust survivor?" So he said that you suffered a lot of pain, you've been humiliated, horrible things happened to you, and the least that we can do is give you a chair. And my mom said, that's a very interesting explanation, but can I offer you another explanation to what it means that I'm a Holocaust survivor? I think that what it means is that if me, you, and your mom, the 3 of us will stand here with no food and no water for hours, you 2 are going to fall first. So you better keep your seat. And when my mother did that, I really understood how she refused to subscribe to a narrative that I think it's all over the world, but in Israel it's even more so, this idea of assuming an identity of a victim. Because she didn't like the idea that being a Holocaust survivor, her life was already scripted, that she was like a little pebble in the mosaic of the memory of the Holocaust. Like when you see the Olympic Games and all those people make those shapes of the, right, and go around. So she was supposed to take her little role. And she said, "No, you got it wrong. I'm a movie star in a period movie. And somehow the damn producer put me in the worst period in history. But I'm still a star. And I'll tell my story. Nobody will tell me how to tell my story." And I think that, whenever, because in our towns there were not that many Holocaust survivors, so once every few years, when there was a memorial service for the Holocaust, they would ask my mother to speak, and she always had the same answer. She said, I'm sorry, I'm afraid there's been a mistake here. I've been through the Holocaust. I don't work at the Holocaust. And this kind of liberty and freedom was something that I always find very inspiring. And I realized that if you have the power to tell your story, you're not imposed, or you don't have to live by the stories others tell about you. My father also survived the Holocaust. He was in Baranovice. It's now Belarus. It used to be Poland. And he lost his sister, but him and his parents survived by digging a hole in the ground and staying in this hole for more than 600 days. And the hole was so shallow that they could not stand in it or lie in it. They could only sit in it. And when the Russians liberated their area, their muscle was so contracted that it took a long time before they could even walk again. And when I asked my father, how did he survive the Holocaust? It's funny because when you're a child, all the time you ask all those tactless questions, because they seem natural. I remember that when he was a child, I once asked him if he thinks the Holocaust was the worst period of his life. And my father's answer was that the way he see it, that there are no bad periods and good periods. There are only difficult periods and easy periods. And he said, all my life I tried to hustle for the easy periods, but I have to admit that it was the difficult ones in which I've learned about myself more. And I thought a lot about this since the 7th of October because of the kind of tests and turmoils that I find myself going through. And I thought about my parents, and I didn't want to go through them as a victim. I wanted to go through them as somebody going through a hard period and trying to learn something on the way. Now, I can say about the 7th of October that it's really like I think that every person in Israel has his 7th of October story. My 7th of October story was that I was supposed to submit my book to the publisher on the 8th of October. And on the 6th of October, I started reading the book because I was supposed to send them a collection of short stories, and I read it. And I realized while reading it, I went to my wife and I said to her, listen, I'm not sure that I can publish this book because I wrote it in a period where my mother died, I wrote it during the judicial revolution. I wrote it during COVID. I wrote it in a period that was very heavy and difficult for me. And I said, when you read this book, it gives a picture of the world that may be much darker than what the world actually is, And my wife said to me, you're such a drama queen. How about you put the book aside, don't forget about it. Maybe you got into it a little bit off. Go to sleep tomorrow morning, get up, read the book, and we'll see. And of course, we got up to the sound of siren and missiles exploding and horrible news arriving. Literally people that we know, and we speak to them while they shoot at their house and everything. And at that moment, I forgot that I wrote a book. It didn't seem like something worth remembering. And the most important thing was to try and find a way to help, to do something, even if it was like the simplest of things. It's really like we would go to the communities of people from the kibbutzim that were sent, and we would just say to people, what, we can read to you, we can read to the children, we can do yoga with the children. I have a medical marijuana prescription, I can roll you a joint, whatever you want. We just want to do something, and we just want to be with you. And I can tell many stories about what the experience that we had there, but I think maybe I'll tell two. I said I'll tell one, but I'll tell two. But I think that it was really like less than a week, or maybe a week, after 7th of October, we went to Shfaim, where the people from Kfar Aza were evacuated. And usually when you go to this place, there are volunteers, people like us that came a little bit before, and they know everything. So they say, you sit here, we will bring people, And it was really like we would read, a children book, and our children books, because my wife is also a children book writer, and I write children books, and we would read to people, and you would see adults sitting with their children, and the children listen to the story, and when there was a sad part in the story, you would suddenly see the parents crying next to their children, like the children following the story and the parents broken to pieces. And we went through all this, and the volunteer that showed us everything and helped us was this a very impressive tall woman that she held the baby in her hand. The baby was asleep for the entire time. And she said, I'll get you chairs, I'll talk to this guy. She was holding the child like a little package, but getting everything done, And before we left, I said to her, it's like our son, he would cry every 5-6 seconds. You're lucky. You're lucky that you have such a quiet child. What's his name? And she suddenly raised her eyes at us in surprise, and she says, I don't know. She said, when I came, just a few minutes before you came, there was a woman breastfeeding, and they came and they told her that her husband was murdered. So she fainted, and somebody held the baby, so he won't. And they gave me the baby, and they took her, and then you came, and I forgot. And she said, I have to bring the baby back. And there was something about this experience that I think that was very much this kind of feeling of disorientation, that you see this mother with a baby, still strong and harmonic, and basically it's a woman holding a baby that isn't her, and she already forgot that she's holding the baby because she had 3 emergencies after that, and it was difficult and heartbreaking. But at the same time, I must say that there were other times that at least for me, I remember something kind of very humane and almost humorous in them. So when we would come and talk to those communities, and then we would never know. Like I could speak to 2 people, I could speak to 100 people. They could be young, they could be old, they could be just. Some of them could be people that has nothing to do with it, but just members of the kibbutz that they were evacuated. And I had one meeting in which somehow it was about 100 people there, and they were from the kibbutzes of the Otef, but they were all elderly. And I came and I read stories and I made them laugh, and it was very, very nice. And it ended and they all clapped. And then when it finished, I kind of take my books and put them in a bag. Then when it's an elderly audience in a kibbutz that is kind of ground floor, it always takes a lot of time for people to get to where they want. Some of them have crates that they drive, others use crouches. So it's kind of a slow process. It's not like that you go boom and people disappear. They kind of start walking and living. And only one woman sat in the middle of the hall, and she had this look that my elementary school teacher had when I didn't do my homework. She seemed to be very, very angry. And I looked at her, and our eyes met, and I said, are you okay? Is there any problem? And she said, all your stories, they're all nice and dandy, but you forgot the most important thing. And I said, what is the most important thing? She said, you didn't tell us what we have to do now. And a trick that I learned from my father is that when somebody asks you for something that you have no idea, you always repeat what they say because you buy time. So say, to tell you what you're supposed to do now, and then this guy that was going with his crouches and was at the doorway bends outside, and he screams, Varda, come back fast. He's going to tell us what we're going to do now. And you see all the audience doing this U-turn and returning slowly to their seats, And when they sat, I told them about my mother. And they seemed to be happy. They seemed to be content with the ability of to do something. I don't want to steal too much of the time, right? So we have time left for the conversation. And so I didn't want to do a big reading. I looked for the shortest text that I could find. But we have more time? Yeah? Okay, so I'll tell you a story, and then I read you this very short text, okay? So so we are 3 siblings in the family. The eldest, my brother, is a political or social activist in the left wing and a high-tech person. And my sister, who's in the middle, she's an ultra-Orthodox. She lives in Jerusalem, and she has 11 children and more than 50 grandchildren. Now, when Michael says it was translated to more than 40 languages, it's usually 41. So in my case, it's 48, but I'm saying that's what we try to do. We want to kind of boost it. When I say that my sister has more than 50, that she has more than 50 grandchildren, it means that when she reached 50, she stopped counting. That's what she said. She said it's a bad luck. So it's not 51. It could be 70. It could be 80. I don't know. And we're very, very close. And even though our politics were always different, the 3 siblings were all very close. And then after the 7th of October, I really, it was a hellish week. I mean, I'm talking about, people, somebody that I ate at his home, was kidnapped from his home to Gaza, and by now he's dead, I'm calling my brother's ex-wife while he's shooting on her brother's apartment when he and his children, they're on the floor live, all those kind of, it was really, really horrifying. And everyone tried to find something to do to be useful. And I can't drive, I'm a horrible cook, so I couldn't do the two things that everybody needed to, and I tried to find my own thing. So I teach in Beersheba University, and basically there would be people looking for the loved ones, and I would help them, sending my students to ER to find out if they're dead, and I would see those kids praying that their parents are dead and not kidnapped, really praying, saying, oh, come on, like as if it's winning a lottery, like waiting for this. And it was a horrifying time. And then after a week, I talked to my sister. And my sister, she's the kindest person. She lives in Jerusalem, in Mea Shearim. Basically, even in the bombing and the shelling, it didn't get to Jerusalem. None of her children or grandchildren is in the army. So the war was horrible for her, but in a very, very abstract way. It's really like, a little bit like, I don't know, we watched war in Ukraine. It really moved her. And she kept telling me how to deal with it, how she wants to help. She tripled her prayers. She would pray 3 times as much as she would pray. And she would pray for this, and she would pray for this, and she would pray for this. Now, me and my sister, we never had a fight in our life. And Michael knows me a little bit, so it's very, very difficult not to have a fight with me. I'm kind of a guy who fights with people, But with my sister, I couldn't fight because she's really like a tzaddik. She's such a good person. But when she started talking about this, I felt there was such a great rift between us that it really made me angry. It really made me angry, thinking about the amputated soldiers that I just saw, thinking about the soldiers I saw reading in Gaza, in the border of Gaza, their faces empty-eyed, and with her saying, I'm going to do a wall, and then I go there, and then I pray this, and in the morning I wake up, and I didn't have patience, and I was very cynical. And my sister, she's very sensitive, she noticed it, but she didn't tell me off, like she didn't say, why you talk this way. And after a few minutes, I said to her, listen, you don't deserve this. It's me, it's not you. Let's hang up the phone, and we'll talk in a week or in a few days when I feel better. And she said, sure, no problem. And I put down the phone, and then I went and started writing a story. Because, when I write, I don't know how other writers write. I think many writers write because they have a message that they want to convey to the world, or I don't know, they're really, really smart and they don't want to waste all their wisdom on themselves. But with me, I write as, writing has a very therapeutic side to me. And one of the things that make me write, usually very bad stories, it's not stories that I don't publish yet later, is when I find myself feeling uncontrollable anger towards a person. And it doesn't matter who this person is. I can, we're in DC, nobody knows me. I can tell you that in my lifetime, I wrote 12 stories from the point of view of Benjamin Netanyahu. None of them came out as a good story, but it made me kind of sweat a little less. So after listening to my sister, I couldn't. I really felt I was shaking. So I thought the trick is you write a story from the point of view of the person that gets you angry. And if I compare it to something that from real life, it's like you're driving a car, somebody cuts you, get to the light, you signal him to get down the window, and then you say to him, hey, asshole, where did you get your driving license? In the supermarket? Are you ugly? Hey, Benji, how are you doing? You still with Sarah? say hi to Sarah. And you're living in this condo? Oh my God, yeah. I should call you sometime. So what really happens is that your anger is about a specific thing. This guy cut you. He's nothing but this cutter that cuts people all the time. He goes like this, like a pendulum on the highway, making people's life horrible. But then you say, no, I've been with him to high school. When we went on a field trip, he gave me a sandwich. Yeah, the truth is, he couldn't drive back then either. I remember he was a very bad driver. But suddenly there's something very humanizing about it because you're inside that perspective. So I said, okay, I'll write a story. And I said, I won't be my sister, I'll be my nephew. There is one nephew that I really, really like. And he lives in Bet Shemesh, not in Jerusalem. It's also a Haredi community, but the real estate is cheaper, you know. So, and I wrote a story about him praying after the 7th of October, exactly like the way that my sister is doing. It's a story called Intention. You can find it online. It was, I don't know, in The Guardian or something. And the thing is that when I started writing the story, very much like when I write stories in which I'm Benjamin Netanyahu and there are reasons for what I'm doing that are actually very moral and nice, then when I wrote this story, I said, okay, I'm my sister, I'm my nephew, I'm my sister, I'm my nephew. And after about 2 pages, I said, I'm doing it. It's me. It's me. It's me. It's exactly me. I identify with this character. This character is that basically what he does, praise and praise and praise to get the kidnapped back, to get peace to the Middle East, to save the people in Gaza, praying for everything. And what I realized at this point in the story was that there is no difference between my sister and myself because I'm a writer and she's a believer. I write stories and she prays. But the truth is that as a professor who teaches creative writing, I know that the thing that stops most people from writing is the fact that they know that nobody will get it. You know, to be honest, like most people wouldn't bother, you know, and the ones that will read it, they just won't get it, you know. And there's something so deterring about it that it's impossible to write because it's as if like you're talking to some thin air. So when you write, the only way to write is to assume that there is somebody out there that you're writing for and to believe that this reader exists. And by trying to write the story for this reader, then basically, maybe this reader does not exist, but you wrote a story, and when you look at the story, you know what you feel, and you know where you're standing. So it's almost like if you can't believe that somebody would want to read you, you can't write. And as I write the story, I said, basically, praying and writing is exactly the same thing. My sister needs to assume some kind of entity there to get out all her yearning, all her sorrows, all her fear, all her misunderstanding of the situation. She can put that in the word through prayer the same way I do it through writing. And that's another kind of phase of writing, that there is something very reconciling about writing. And in times of really a lot of incitement and when the society is broken, then this is also something that can be mended through imagination. So I just do a very, very short reading because for me it's bad luck if I finish my speech and don't read anything, but it's really a very short text. And this text was a WhatsApp message that I sent because when I was in one of the kibbutzim, in one of the communities, I met this amazing girl. And I don't know how much you know about kibbutzes, but there is one thing about kibbutzes, it's very difficult to keep your privacy in a kibbutz. Because when you go there, then everybody say, oh, come on, Chaim, tell him the story about how you fell in the mud and everybody, you know, oh, come, show him the wig, you know. It's really like you have all these kind of things that you own nothing. And when I came there, her mother called me. She said, come over. I have a funny story to tell you about my daughter. And the daughter said, please, Mom, I don't want you to tell that. He said, why? It's so funny. Come on, I'll tell you the story. And basically, the story was that she didn't want to tell, but her mother told it anyway, was that when the Hamas terrorists came into their house, they were in the locked room, and they heard them shooting inside the house. Then the daughter said to her mother, Mom, there are so many books that I haven't read yet. I don't want to die stupid. And me and that girl, we talked, we sat and we talked a lot. Her father, who fought to defend the kibbutz, was murdered by the Hamas. And on the way back, I didn't know what to say, so I sent her a WhatsApp message. And sometimes I don't know how it is with you. I just kind of write words, you know. I say, I don't know. Like, I felt that I need to send something, even though I had nothing to send. And I kind of blabbered something, and I sent it to her. And the next day, I felt bad. And I said, listen, I'm sorry that I sent you this message. And she said, yesterday was the funeral of my father, and I read it over his grave. So I want to read it to you. And it's called the Signs of Life. Now close your eyes and try to stop being angry. Try to stop raging at all those who deserve your righteous fury. Close your eyes and allow yourself, just for a moment, to simply feel the pain, to hesitate, to be confused, to feel sorrow, remorse. You still have your whole life to spend persecuting, avenging, reckoning. But for now, just close your eyes and look inward. Like a satellite hovering over a disaster zone, searching for signs of life. A lot has been taken away from you, but you're still a human being, wounded, bloodied, angry, hurting, frightened, drowning in sorrow, but still human. Take a deep breath and try to remember the feeling, because you know that a minute from now, when you open your eyes again, it will be gone. Thanks. Thank you.
They didn't make these chairs for short Jews. It's hard to actually get up in it.
No, it's actually.
You turn it on.
Now I have to press something. Switch. Oh. I actually like those chairs because they make me look taller.
Okay, well, both of us are lying then. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's always so incredible for us to host and for me personally to meet literary figures from Israel. But in the past year, the people who we've had in this room who have been able to come here and share with us what they've experienced and then what they've done about it. And the first Israeli writer we had here in February, actually after October 7th, was Ayelet Gundar Goshen. And I was thinking as you were speaking, that, you know, kind of what a difference half a year makes. It was almost impossible for her to get the words out. It was so incredibly raw. So
I can say something about Ayelet specifically, that I met her after the 7th of October because she's a psychiatrist or psychologist. And basically what happened is that the people who were treating the people from the OTEF, the psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers were experiencing nervous breakdowns, because it's really like the idea was somebody needed to help them, you know, and especially, and what happened was that with no infrastructure and no normal way to retaliate, those people found themselves, you know, dealing with drowning in huge amount of sorrow with no ability to answer the needs of people around them. And basically what I would do, I would go to mental institutes like Shalvata that Ayelet is there, and I would kind of do those pep talks to the people. Like, I would say, okay, now let's talk about you, because nobody talks about you the rest of the time.
Right, but when you're the person speaking to them, you're kind of absorbing their pain and their stories. And as a writer, you're always doing that, but at that juncture, I think it was overwhelming for a lot of people, and obviously it still is. So first off, I want to thank you very, very much for actually putting yourself out here and sharing with us. I'm sure that not everyone in this room has had a chance to be in Israel since October 7th. I was there in May. I'm going again next month, and it really is. There's no comparison, and so if we can't go there, and of course all of the airlines in the world keep trying to make it less and less possible to go there, we have a piece of Israel here with you. So, so you described your state of mind since October 7th as here but not completely here. And I think that's true for a lot of people, but I also think that's a way that I would sort of describe a lot of your characters, a lot of your work, this sort of liminal space between reality and unreality, this kind of surrealism.
If I may, but when I say here and not completely here, it's really like, it's not like in my stories. I try to find a metaphor for it, but I think that, let's say, if you imagine reality in Israel in the past year, imagine some kind of a split screen. One of it moving in Charlie Chaplin speed. People dying, bombing, 100,000 people taking off the north, going there, blah, blah, blah. You look at the other side, and it's frozen, What's going to happen? What's our plan for the day after in Gaza? Didn't know it the first day, don't know it now. When will my prime minister go and give interviews to Israeli media? Didn't do it on the 8th of October, and he didn't do it till now. Basically, when with this government, when will Netanyahu assume responsibility for it? Didn't do it now. So this idea is that, like, on the half side of it, you're free falling. You see everything that you believed in burning. You see your country being taken to court in Hague. You see crazy fundamentalists break into military bases just because they're investigating a rape of a convict, and with members of the family of the government leading them. You see all this craziness, and on the other side you say, hey, but what's going to happen now? What are we doing now? What are we planning to do? And nothing, It's like, for example, the Philadelphia tier. You heard about the Philadelphia tiers that basically stop the kidnapped people from returning? I've been to the Philadelphia tier, during this work, just because, I gave readings in this area. Nobody spoke about it. Actually, we didn't, when we got into Gaza, Rafah was the last place we went to. If it was so of huge importance, it could have been the first place. So, but the idea is, so you say, what is the reality? So Philadelphia is important. Why didn't they tell us that 8 months ago? So this kind of a unbelievable gap between this constant chaos and action and that other side where really nothing happens. They're going to have the 7th of October ceremony, kind of memorial. Family said, please don't do it. We didn't do the Holocaust memorial when people were burning in Auschwitz. We shouldn't do that when they're still in the cave. But the government said, we actually want to do it. So, but we'll do it without audience, and we'll do it recorded. And that's the feeling that we are, that this government is governing without an audience and in a delay of time. And I'm saying, this is what I mean. This is what I mean, that you go outside, you see pain. You look at the television, you see members of the parliament saying, I don't understand, what's wrong? Actually, I'm quoting. This is Goldknopf and Amsalem saying, everything seems fine, you know. I checked my pulse, my kid is healthy. What are you complaining about? So this idea of kind of a total rift between a country and the people who are supposed to lead it, this is what I mean, that you're neither here nor there, because it feels like a limbo. You are in this pit where bad things keep going, and you say, the people up there that should give me an arm, they're busy doing something else.
So they're they're the surreal. I mean, you've created surreal situations all of your career. I think you've been called an inheritor of Kafka or influenced by Kafka, and the combination of animals having a presence and also this kind of state of being that's not believable. You've used that for a long time to different effect, but now I think what you're saying is you're saying that the government is in that unreal space and that they're not seeing what's in front of them. So that leads to what was going to be my last question for you, but it won't be. Israel has, those who know me are not surprised by that. Israel has a long tradition of what you might call engagé artists who are really, really engaged in the world around them. There's no such thing in Israel as a separation. And when you think of people like Aleph Bet Yoshua and Amos Oz, especially Amos Oz and others, they've always jumped right in, and they're known. And we were talking at lunch about what a small country it is, how much familiarity. You walk down the street and you bump into a general, if I may tell them, hey, you bumped into a prominent member of the government coming
In
out
the toilet.
in the toilet. Yes. So between
I shouldn't have let him get out of the
know,
toilet.
you
I should have
should have,
locked
right.
him in.
But and that would be too absurd even for one of your situations that you create. So the combination of this tradition in Israel of these engaged artists and the small personal nature of the country, do you feel like even more so you have a responsibility? You were talking, you can't cook, you can't this and that, but like, is this your mission? And if so, like, do you wear it easily? Do you want this kind of responsibility?
So I really think that writing, it really changed the place it had for me in my life since the war. You know, because I think that looking back at myself, I was a very vain writer. You know, I really thought that my writing was important, that my message to the world is important. And I can tell you that what happened during the war was that all the walls broke and people start asking you for stuff. Really, like, this woman in Instagram writes to me, my husband is in Gaza, and you know they can't use the phones in Gaza. By the way, all the soldiers read books, you know, because they can't use the phone because the Hamas can pinpoint it, so they sit for hours. And basically, the most read people in Israel right now are soldiers. So she said, I talked to my husband and I said to him, what do you want me to prepare for you when you come back? You know, at that time, she thought he'd come back after a week, I guess, but he probably came back after 4 months. And he said to her, I don't have time for this. And she said, no, tell me something, anything. So he said to her, write to me a story about a crocodile, and hang up. And she writes to me on Instagram, I have a 3-month-old baby. I don't know how to tell stories. You know how to tell stories. Write my husband a story about crocodile. And with me, like all the time, feeling very inspired, and writing is so important thing. I sit down and write a story about the crocodile for this woman in tears with her baby. So she read it to her husband, and I think that I tell you, and when the wars break, it doesn't have like there was an amputated soldier that I met, and he said to me, "I love writing," and I said to him, "Look, you know, if you ever write a story, send me." And he would send me on WhatsApp, and I give him comments. And then he said, let's write a story together. And I said to him, son, you don't do it. You don't write stories together. I mean, I don't know if you listen to Michael, but I'm translated to 48 languages, you know. And I mean, you're only 20, man, and you write on WhatsApp. But I said it in a nice way, okay? and, and the soldier said to me, come on, it's easy. I'll send you the beginning on WhatsApp, and then you send me the next paragraph, and then I'll send you. You see, it works. And I wrote a story with this guy. You know, it's really, it may not be the best story I've ever collaborated on, but it's a very moving story. And I can say that if I want to go to the extreme of how I kind of, how this kind of holy writing had become something that is really functional, is during the war, I suddenly get a message from a guy saying, listen, my ex-wife, she's very depressed. You know, in the war, I don't know, she's like, somebody from a family is in Gaza, is in the army, and she's very depressed. And tomorrow is her birthday. So I thought that because you're her favorite writer, I have this idea that we'll hide in the bushes next to her apartment house, and when she comes out to work, we'll jump out and surprise her. So I wrote to him, like,
I see why she's his ex-wife.
yeah. So I said, let's elaborate a little bit about the word ex, just to make sure. Do you have a restraining order? Because we should. And he said, no, man, you know, I love her. We love each other. Everything is great. And I said to him, I'm 57 years old. I don't jump out of bushes, you know. I stopped doing that when I was 45. And then he said, okay, I had to try. Because she's just, you know, she's in a very bad mood. And I was just about to send the manuscript for publishing of my latest book. And when you do a story collection, then sometimes you notice that you wrote stories in a gap of 4 years, and you name the characters with the same name, and you say, this can't be the same guy, this is confusing. So when I did it, I find that there was a minor character, a divorced woman, in a date. And I text him, what's your ex-wife's name? He said, Oksana. I said, okay, I tell you what we do. I'll send you a story, you know, from my new book, and you tell her when you jump out of the bushes, if the police won't arrest you first, you tell her that she's became a character in my story. And he did that, and the funny thing is I'm a vegetarian. And then he wrote to me, he said, man, I owe you, I have a chicken restaurant. Come and eat something, anything you want. And I said to her, I'm a vegetarian. So he sent me that he changed the menu, and in his menu, he didn't have any vegetarian dishes, and he had the Etgar dish, which is vegetables on the grill, you know? So he said, so if you ever come by, I don't want you to sit at a table and to be hungry.
That's nice. Tell me where it is, I'll go. So I was really struck by something that you could say was maybe almost prophetic in one of the stories that you wrote in your book, 7 Good Years, your memoir. And the English title of this chapter, story, is The Way We Wore. The Way We Wore. And that was actually cute. How did you get that English translation? That means something that has a cultural reference in America from the Hebrew title.
So I must say that I have amazing English translators. I think this was translated by Miriam Schlesinger, that had passed away since then. But like, I only pretend to know English. My translators actually do.
Very clever. So you tell the story about how various minor annoyances in life going through your day are all sort of put aside. And this was written referring to the war in 2014. And they're put aside by someone saying to someone else, how can you get mad at me because I took your parking space or this or that, when there are people, when there are young soldiers fighting and dying, and then being good Israelis, they all say, oh, you're right, and it keeps working, and it works each time to make people feel guilty. I guess they are Jewish anyway. And what really got me, though, is that when you use this excuse with a stubborn taxi driver who didn't want to take you, he says, not only, you're right, the argument worked here like magic, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Missiles are falling in Tiberias, all you can think about is a damn car seat. You say, worked like magic. The embarrassed driver quickly apologized and told me to hop in. But when, this is what the clincher here, when we got on the highway, he said, partly to me, partly to himself, "It's a real war, eh? Just like in the old days." And you then expound on that to talk about how the old wars in the first decades were terrible, but everybody was in it together, and how
No, this is not
here,
what I said.
well, here you said after the
No, I can tell
years
you
of
what I said. I'm very good at
Intifada.
saying what I say,
Well,
but
maybe
this is not
said
what I
this in
said.
English. I don't know.
Yeah, no. So I just want to present, because what I said was that in the old days, the wars, let's say, of an army against an army,
Right.
unlike, let's say, Intifada. So there was something clear in the war where you knew who your enemies were and who were not your enemies. And when you have wars that is like taken into towns and where you stop people in checkpoints, then it becomes less more complex. And that what the driver is missing the old days when you knew the good guys from the bad guys.
Right. And there's this gray area now, and you talk about the exhaustion of two intifadas, and how there is almost this nostalgia, and I think that there has been an evolution in the past year, where in the early days after October 7th, there was more unanimity, and you saw signs all over, and you still do in Tel Aviv, we will win together, oldie together. But as things have dragged on, obviously, I don't need to tell anyone in this room, there's been really a sea change. So do you think that that there is some sort of special character to the old wars that has been lost, not only in terms of fighting this war, but in terms of Israeli society and coming apart at the seams, and exemplified by the way this war is being fought?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I think that the idea is that basically, if you go to the demonstrations, then you will hear people calling bereaved families or people that were in Gaza kidnapped and released, or people that have family members in Gaza. You will hear Israelis, Jews, shouting at them, "I wish you were in Gaza too with your son. I wish you died too with your soldier son." An amount of hatred that I must say that is focused on people just for reminding them in what state they are. Like in this sense, like you really try to pathologically understand what could cause a Israeli Jewish person stand and curse a bereaved family. What could make them say, "We wish that you die in the grave with your sons that fought to save"? And you really say that the existence of the kidnap, the existence of those dead people, basically insinuate a failure. And if you don't want to admit the failure, then in the end, here in the US, they all talked about ripping posters, of the kidnapped. My wife was water hosed with people who were kidnapped in Gaza and came out. Families of the people kidnapped in Gaza were beaten by the police. My best friend 2 days ago, who deals with education of children, was arrested for holding a sign, "Brings them home now," and was taken and put in the back of a police car, and they kicked him in the ribs. So I'm saying that it's almost as if they would wish all this pain away. If all the kidnaps would disappear, if all the families would just shut up, then we could all say that we're doing the right thing. Now, the biggest mitzvah by Jewish religion, that's my sister told me, is Pidyon Shvuim. It's basically releasing people who are trapped. And here we have a government that is dominated by Orthodox settlers and ultra-Orthodox people that basically are interested in another narrative. And while many people in Israel are crying, they say they already feel redemption is coming. Very much like the evangelist on the Christian side, their work plan is to bring us to apocalypse. The only difference between the evangelists and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich is that they don't know who's going to kill who in the end. But when your work plan is really to burn everything down, so the Messiah will have to come and save you, like a kid, you know, who start burning the furniture to get attention from his parents, then you really, really feel that you're in a very bad spot.
So on that happy note, we have time for a few questions. If audience members, we have microphones that can go around. Okay, Laura in the back has, and there's another. Oh, and Thomas. We have in the front here. Just wait for Laura. Oh, I didn't see you. Okay, Laura, we have a student in the blue and white shirt.
Hi, my name is Harrison. Thank you so much for coming to speak. My question surrounded what you were talking about earlier about storytelling and the power that it has brought, particularly your parents, the ability to communicate these kind of shared historical memories that they have and transform that into love. And in the class that I'm currently taking, we talk about how that contributes to what the idea of a nation is and how a nation is able to transcend these boundaries of identity because it's based in this shared historical memory to a certain extent. And so my question was, in which ways does storytelling kind of enable you to be able to deal with and reconcile the traumas of your past and your family's past? And maybe how does that help reconceptualize how we can approach the shared kind of narratives of Palestinians and Israelis to maybe communicate a new narrative of love and peaceful coexistence?
Wow. I think that if I give a good answer for this one, an angel will come from the sky. No, I tell you something. When you talk about writing, you know, I always tell my students that we all live our life, I don't know, like normally, but let's say if one of us disappear, and I'll have to go to the police, you know, and I don't know, say, I can find Michael, help me find Michael, you know, then basically the stuff that I will say that will help people find Michael will probably be the stuff that he hates the most. It's like, you know, broken tooth, scar, I don't know, a birthmark on your forehead. I don't know. Very funny. I don't know. It's like half bald, half not bald. You know this. Now, these are the things that help you find something. If I would say, oh, you know, he's a good-looking guy. He has like those two blue eyes. They'll never find you. They will find you only by your faults. And I think that there is something about writing is this ability to take those things that you try to hide, you know, and kind of through putting them in writing, both kind of reconciling with them and learn that they're not just this thing to be ashamed of. They're part of you, you know. Very much like my mother told this kid what she thinks means to be a Holocaust survivor. You know, in my first collection, I think here it's the girl on the fridge, I have a text about an asthma attack. Now, I lived all my life. I was born with an asthma. I was born in 6 months of pregnancy, weighing 900 grams. Everybody promised my mom I'll die, but, you know, but don't trust doctors, you know. But I'm saying all my life, asthma seemed to me like a curse, like, you know, the Sleeping Beauty or something, because I said, you know, there is another Edgar in a parallel Rick and Morty universe, okay? And that Edgar is taller because he didn't get all those asthma. And that Edgar, when he played soccer, he can actually go to Major League because he's not suffering from his asthma. And that Edgar, when he joins the army, he can stay with his friend because they don't put him in a different unit because he's asthmatic. So he's like the upgraded Edgar, flying business class, you know, while I have this middle seat. And then I wrote this text called Asthma Attack. And basically what this text, which is very short, says, when you have an asthma attack, you can't bullshit because you have only 3 or 4 words that you can say. And that makes you say the truth. And when you say the truth, you say to the people around you, but you also say to yourself. And writing this text made me understand that that guy on the parallel universe who plays soccer and who's taller, he's not me. He's another person. And basically, it's those scars and the failures, you know, that make me what I am. And I think that in a healthy state, this is what a nation does. What a nation does. That when you tell a story, when you tell your stories about your traumas, your failures, your weaknesses, this is when you have a chance to heal. When you try to suppress them and kind of simplify the reality around you, you cannot find remedy to a disease that you don't even admit its existence.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you have a question on this side? Or you're our mic runner? Okay. Yeah. I think we have one in the back. Amy, hi.
Hi, this is less philosophical and more technical. Maybe it's an emotional break. Like a lot of people here, I read your Alphabet Soup Substack, and I wondered if the experience of writing like that, a bunch of different, you know, genres, things that get instantly responded to, if that feels different or has changed how you write. Compared to however else you know, just writing for publication as you've always done.
Thank you. It's a wonderful question. So because I must say that, you know, that everything I do around my art is always very, very selfish. You know, I'm really like, I'm first and foremost, I always write for myself. You know, I sometimes kind of try to trick the readers to think that I wrote it for them, but it's always for myself. And I started my Substack newsletter, the weekly newsletter, Alphabet Soup, during COVID. And the idea was that I felt this kind of great loneliness. And I really also had the feeling that the world had been kept changing really, really, really fast. And I publish a book every 7 years. And I say, I feel something and I write about it. What, I'm going to wait now 6 years till somebody will say, no, you're wrong? You know, it's really, I need this kind of support and I need this kind of hug. And very much like changing the character of Oksana, you know, so he'll have some good news when he jumps out of the bushes. Then I think that my attitude to writing changed, because when you write a weekly newsletter, sometimes I publish stories there. When those stories will, some of them won't come out in a book because I won't think they're good enough. But the ones that will come out in the book, for sure, will be edited differently. But when I do that, when I publish there, I publish for companionship. And I want to say that since the 7th of October, it also kind of gave me a very interesting perspective, because I always published op-eds both in Israel and overseas. Now in Israel, when I published an op-ed, I could know its effect, you know. Let's say if I would get a death threat or a death threat for my child, I knew it was a good piece, you know. But when I would publish them overseas, it was just like I would go and say, hey, look, I'm in Le Monde. I have an op-ed in the New York Times, but I didn't have any real interaction with the people. And now when I have Alphabet Soup, then it's amazing. I was telling Michael in the car that I wrote a piece about the fact that in Israel, some radio station boycott Roger Waters. And I wrote a piece, and the piece was really like that. When I joined the army with my two best friends, we said, we must have a funeral song, because if, God forbid, one of us dies, we couldn't ask him what songs they want. And the three of us listened really for a week. We didn't think we were going to die. We thought it was funny, actually. But we were listening to songs and arguing, and then the three of us decided that if one of us dies, we want to play Wish You Were Here in the funeral. And then one of us died. And the two of us didn't have the guts to go to his parents and to say to him, put this song, because his parents were totally shattered, and we felt like traitors. And every time I hear this song, I feel the love that I have for my friend. I feel the loss that I had. I feel my inability to control the universe. And I said, if I boycott Roger Waters, I'm punishing myself much more than I'm punishing him. Like what? Because he's going to get $5 from that? I'm screwing the guy. I'm getting a piece of my life for that $5. And I published this piece in Israel, and people start saying, "Oh, it's so predictable, protecting anti-Semites. It's so much like you, you know." And but then when it was on Alphabet Soup, people say to me, "How dare you say that Roger Waters is anti-Semite? How dare you say it's wrong? He's right. The 7th of October never happened, you know." And then it really kind of gave me this kind of a wider perspective and dialogue. And after all those years in which I would throw my op-eds into the Word and say, "Oh my God, you know, the Word is so much smarter than Israelis, because the Word never stops me in the street and tells me that I'm stupid, you know. All those French and Italian people, they never told me a bad thing." Suddenly, when I have a newsletter, I really can feel stronger how people are reading me all over the world.
Michael, do we have time for one more, you think? Okay. Yes. Yes. Oh. And you can have mine.
Thanks.
Hello, my name's Anushka, and my question kind of goes off of what you just said. There's a really difficult balance to strike between supporting Israel publicly, internationally, not necessarily supporting the actions of the government, but just supporting Israel's right to exist, the right of Israelis to life, and then back in Israel against the government, against the current government, especially with what's been going on since October 7th. How do you strike that balance in your personal life? I know like quite a few of the students here are involved personally with a lot of pro-Israel things on campus, and it can be difficult because you don't want to be, boxed into that one idea where, if you write your books, someone will say, of course, defending anti-Semites, but then on your Substack, they'll say, no, he's not. How do you keep yourself from being boxed into that one, idea?
So I return to my mom's advice when she said, really, in bad times, stay in the mud, break root. So I think that the most important thing is not to try to evaluate yourself or to navigate your decisions by the way that you'll be perceived, which I think is the best thing to do in good times. This is really like when the times are good, just you can float in the word and go there. But in times like this, it's really, I'm saying, you really, it's not as if like there are like the pro-Israeli bus, the anti-Israeli bus, and if these are the two buses, you have to walk. You can't take them. None of them will get you to your destination. And I think that really, for me, supporting Israel is like loving somebody, So I'm saying, if somebody here that I don't know, I'll go to the restroom and I'll see that he's shooting crack, I say, good for you, have a good one. If somebody that I love will be shooting crack, I will get into a physical fight with them. I will argue, I will curse him, I will call the police because he's important for me. Now, I think that people that see Israel is important for them, I think that by giving this complex message of saying, we support Israel, but we can't defend everything in Israel. I support Israel, but when somebody says to me, how can members of your government say that they'll throw an atomic bomb on Gaza and that even if they kill Palestinian kids in Gaza, it's totally justified because they will grow up to be terrorists? How can you defend it? I can't defend it. I can't defend those people. What I can defend is the Israeli spirit, that when this man says that, 500,000 people go in the street, and and my brother gets arrested, and my wife gets beaten, and I'm the only coward who runs fast enough. My nickname among the demonstrators, among my family, they call me the coward, and I say that I'm just smart, but I never get caught. And they say that because I always always take steps back before others. But I'm saying, this is the proof of the strength and the validity of Israel, not the fact that we salute to the flag. The fact that you have a country that, we have many totalitarian countries, many countries that have strong fundamentalist religious spirits in them. Most of those countries, they stay on their knees. I'm half Polish. I'll prove that to you. I have the passport here, you see? That's my Polish passport. I'm half Polish, okay? So I can say bad things about Polish people. Now, the Polish people are amazing. When they had their crazy religious government, that would be against abortion, that would try to destroy democracy, they went for a few demonstrations. And then it started getting really cold. And then the policemen started beating them up. So they stayed home and for years had lost their democracy. In Israel, this isn't happening. The people go and fight in Gaza for 120 days, and when they go back, they go to the streets and they get beaten by the police. That same police that can sleep safe in their home because they're fighting for them. And this is something to be proud of. To be proud of a country or to be proud of a people, it's not to be proud of a prime minister or a government. I don't know what your political views are, but I'm sure that there were many people during the Trump administration that didn't agree with it. To be American doesn't mean that you be proud that at the 21st century, if you get pregnant, you won't have the right to have an abortion. There's nothing to be proud about that. But I think you have to take pride in America because it's not the American way, and that America will fight that, and America will try to get out of this war. This is the America. It's not the perfection. It's the spirit to fight and not to give up.
Thank you.
I think you should go on the campaign trail in America. I'll just say in summation that my favorite thing that I've ever read of yours, which I've sent to some people in this room, is a story about you being out of the country, being in Sweden, and then you're afraid that you might get stuck out of the country and not be able to be back in time for Yom Kippur. You're not dati, you're not religiously observant, and yet it was so important to you to be in the country for Yom Kippur. And there's a wonderful ending that I won't give away. But aside from all of the anger and all of the very informed criticisms that you levy, especially people in power, I think that part of the magic, really the magic of what you convey, is that other aspect of being in Israel, of only in Israel, of Israeliness, that's given with love also, as often as it's given with anger, as you clearly feel right now. So I think that's why you have so many fans. I'm glad that so many of your fans could join us in person. I know they're more online. And on that note, we have ordered books of Etgar's, and he is graciously willing to sign books if you buy them outside. And we have a
not
reception.
graciously. I get a percentage
Okay.
from each book.
Like the kid in the story, that's how you make money. Okay, all right. Here I am trying to sugarcoat it. Buy books. So please join us outside. Thank you so much. Thank you, Etgar, and join us outside.